So many writers think that the writing journey is actually really economically a great way to make money because it's kind of free to put out a book and then the money starts rolling in. And much as that can be true with a lot of work and a lot of talent in many different areas, many writers consider hiring various professionals in the course of their writing journey to support different aspects of their work. And I think that there is this whole layer of mystery around what each of these professionals does, whether you need them, how much they cost, and how you work with them. And so many authors are afraid of asking these questions, even when they hire me as their writing coach. They're almost like, okay, I hired you, but I'm not really sure. What do you do? I'm afraid to ask. And so I thought it would be so fun in this episode of the How to Be an Author podcast to talk about all of these professionals that kind of are in that whole realm, the universe of writing and of publishing, and these little satellites that we find along the way. Some of them are very, very helpful. Some of them are maybe non-essential. And, many of us consider our writing and our book an investment, and that's great. And sometimes I feel like you're overpaying for some things and underpaying for others. So let's talk about all these different types of book industry professionals in today's episode. If you're a writer dreaming of becoming a successful author, join me, writing coach Karena Akhavein, on the How to Be an Author podcast, your weekly source for writing information, inspiration, and motivation. Hello, and welcome to the How to Be an Author podcast. I am your host, writing coach Karena Akhavein, and it is my job to holistically help you with your writing career. I can provide so much feedback, guidance, story help with your author platform, help with the publishing process, all of that stuff for a fee. Right? And many of you who are in my Writing Coach on Demand program know how much value you get from that program, because for less than $1 a day, you get access to office hours with me, in addition to extra bonus materials that you can use to help you to improve your writing and your writing career. And that's a really important message, because other people decide that, they're going to pay me my hourly rate, or they're going to take my course, or whatever. And that's a really important message. You get to pick and choose how much it makes sense for you to pay, right? It makes sense for you to say, okay, I want to pay more here and less there. But of course, there's always a trade-off. So if you're doing Writing Coach on Demand rather than doing an hourly rate of coaching or doing the course, which is a bigger lump sum, but not that big, you are having to do some of the work yourself as well, right? So you're having to listen to my podcast and then do the writing exercises and do the things that I gave you for homework. And then you're going to come back and see me. And so I'm not doing it all for you. I'm talking to you about the stuff that you are doing for you and that you're getting guidance on. So that's a really important distinction, right? Do you want it done for you? Do you want guidance and feedback and assistance, or are you going to do it yourself? No matter what, if you want to be a professional writer, there's certain tasks and things that you need to do, and you can't skip any of them. None of them are skippable. That's the funny thing about it. And if you missed the episode of What is Your Job as a Writer, I highly recommend that one. I think that's a great precursor to this episode, or just go and listen to it afterwards. But I think that it's really important to realize that there are non-negotiables, there are non-skippables when it comes to building an author career and promoting and selling books and writing books that are professional. That's really important. There's, if you're not going to be doing professional, if you're planning on doing this as a hobby, I definitely recommend skipping any of these professionals, because I don't think it's worth your investment. You're investing when you're thinking of a business. Though sometimes we invest in self-improvement. That's cool. You can do that. But I wouldn't be hiring an editor if you're just writing for yourself. I really wouldn't do that unless you're viewing your editor as some kind of a teacher who's helping your writing skills. So that is something important to consider. So let's quickly go over the list of professionals I'm going to be talking about in this episode. And then we'll do like a big deep dive and I'll tell you more about, how much they cost and what they do and how you work with them because, it's a two-way street. When you're hiring a professional, you are working with them to make your book as good as it can be. But ultimately, it's your book. So there needs to be a lot of communication and back and forth without you driving them crazy. That's important too. So the professionals I'm going to be talking about are number one, writing coaches and editors. So those two things are really important if you want to have, successful career and if you want to have a well-written, well-edited manuscript. That feedback, guidance, assistance, it's going to be really important. And the rates for both of these professionals, usually hourly rates for a writing coach, that's usually like $150 or so an hour. And I offer package deals, but right now I can't take any new clients because I have too many new clients, which is why I did Writing Coach on Demand, which allows you to get office hours with me for less than $1 a day, which is kind of awesome. But that's also why I poured my heart and soul and all my teaching into my From Idea to Published in 6 Months masterclass that gets you all the information that I could possibly give you on every single aspect of writing, publishing a book, and building your author platform, plus Writing Coach on Demand for 6 months. I mean, this is the best deal out there for sure. And at $479, I kind of feel like it's a no-brainer, but some people might feel like that is a lot. And as I say very transparently, and as you can kind of hear more about in my podcast episode on writing a book and publishing a book in 6 months, I walk you through the process. You can cobble together your own version of this course, maybe for free, but it's going to take a lot of cobbling. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of research and experience and mistakes and failures and feeling your way. And so it's going to take you a lot longer. Some people say time is money. And so it's true that many of these professionals that we're talking about today, you are paying them for the convenience, for helping you to not waste your time, for helping you to get your book to market faster and with less effort and mistakes and, all of that good stuff. So many times there's a convenience fee or an expedition fee. There's that. Some of these things you can definitely do yourself, but it's going to take you time. So, okay, writing coaches and editors, and we'll be talking more about working with those in just a little bit. You also have literary agents. And literary agents, I almost didn't put them in here because you're not paying for them up front. And if they're asking for money up front, they're probably a scammer. But that's their fees are performance based. But we'll be talking about how to work with an agent, how to find an agent. And this is frustrating because it's not a question of just picking one and saying, I think this agent would be great. I would like to work with them. Usually, you don't get to choose the agent, they choose you. So you're going to be querying them. We're going to be talking a little bit about that. I've done a whole author podcast episode on editors and working with an editor. You have different types of editors that go from developmental, which is the type of editing I prefer to do, to structural, grammar, style, line editing, overall improvement, all of that stuff. And their rates vary depending on the type of editing. Like if they're proofreading or copy editing, they're going to be giving you a different rate than developmental editing, for example. And many times this rate goes by words. So rates can range from 2 cents to 30 cents per word, depending on the editor, or they'll give you a flat fee. And I used to give a flat fee, but now I have had some writers who are wonderful, but let me tell you, it is hard work to edit a book. And sometimes they'll misrepresent. They'll give me a really polished chapter. And then I'm like, oh, great, easy, easy. And then I realized that the book takes a lot more work than that first chapter might have shown. So there's definitely the flat fee is a thing sometimes, especially if your editor knows you. Many times, especially with repeat customers, I'm like, okay, I can definitely do the flat fee, but often I live to regret it. So maybe doing a per word or a per different type of job is a better way of doing it, but we'll talk more about how to work best with a book editor because it's not so easy to work with them It's a relationship. It takes a certain type of communication and feedback from both of you. So we'll talk about that in this episode. And then cover designers. This is really important. This is one of the things that I say definitely, if you're not a great graphic designer yourself, I would say paying for cover design is really money well spent, because your cover is your book's first impression, and prices vary. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that the most expensive price is always worth it, but sometimes you get what you pay for. And we'll talk about how to work with a cover designer, how to communicate with them, because they cannot read your mind. And there are different cover designers, different levels of, working with them. I've had some nightmares that I'll talk to you about, and I've heard some nightmares from clients that have made me laugh, but it's not funny. So we'll talk about that. And then you get publicists that can help to promote books, secure media coverage, and we'll talk about that. And rates can, again, range a lot depending on the scope of work, the publicist's experience, and sometimes this can be invaluable, and sometimes this can be a little bit frustrating depending on how they work. So we'll talk about that in a second. And then you can also hire different types of consultants, including like a marketing consultant, or some people are hiring people like formatters. People are, hiring all kinds of things. Now, I've always said that in terms of hiring a formatter or somebody who's going to help you to upload your book to, the ebooks or to Amazon, honestly, that's the one thing where I think that's a huge waste of money, because Amazon KDP walks you straight through it. So if I, with ADHD, can do it with just a few shots of coffee and, some time set ahead to really focus on it, you can do this too. So I really recommend not wasting your money on that. Though some book formatters are, geniuses who make your book look so beautiful. If that's important to you and if it's a price that you can afford, I say, sure, okay, do that. That's fine. That's fair enough. And then finally, there is the audiobook actor recording person. Many times I recommend that authors record their own audiobooks if they're at all able, but for some of you, that is impossible. And maybe rightly so, you say that, I think actually a professional voiceover person or a professional audiobook person would really do more justice to my book, and it's worth it for me to pay them. And some people actually do things on future, gains. So you can find somebody who will record your audiobook, kind of for free up front. Then they'll be taking a profit sharing. That's cool, but are they the best person for your book? Important to look. So let's rewind back to, what does a writing coach do, right? Writing coach, like me, is a professional who usually provides guidance, support, and feedback to writers at various stages in their writing journey. So the real thing about hiring a writing coach is that you're going to be getting a tailored program just for you. You're going to be getting feedback that is specific to you. This is like working with a therapist, basically, right? What are my problems? How can we work through this? How can I improve step by step? And I really give you guidance on, all different aspects of your work, from feedback and critique of your work. Like, I'll look at your writing craft. I'll look at your character development. I'll look at, how are you writing your dialogue? Are you info dumping? Definitely we can look at areas that need improvement. But that's just one of the things. Writing coaches usually help you with goal setting and accountability. So checking in and be like, hey, how's it going? How's your schedule going? Are you blocked? Are you motivated? How can I help you? Many times it's really hard to stay accountable to yourself. You just need somebody you can check in with. And, as a writing coach, I try to really strike the right balance between being super, kind of supportive and helping you to stay accountable. But also sometimes I don't want you to burn out. So I'm going to make you feel good about moving forward slowly. Nobody's in a race. And so that whole holistic mindset, preserving your motivation and productivity, all that's really important. And I'll help you, definitely to stay motivated, definitely to stay productive. If I see you wasting time in your writing process, I'm definitely going to call you out on it for sure, but kindly. And also you'll get publishing guidance. So if you want to publish yourself, or if you want to publish, through a publishing company, I'm going to help you to make informed decisions about your options and the process. That's really important. And also just giving you that one-on-one targeted support But I do this since my prices got so high because I had too many clients and I couldn't really devote all the time I wanted to. I totally wrapped this into my From Idea to Publish in 6 Months course, which you get all of this stuff and you get the Writing Coach on Demand for such a low price, but it's worth it because I know that you're doing a big part of it yourself. This helps you and it helps me. So again, remember, how much work are you wanting to do versus how much work are you wanting somebody else to do when it comes to your overall book projects? Very important. Some people really want to do it all themselves. Some people literally are in love with the idea of a story and they want to hire a ghostwriter because they don't want to do any of it. They just want to see that story come to life. And that is fair enough. No judgment on that. And as for how to work well with a writing coach, I think some of the most important things are being open to the feedback, but also communication, right? It's ultimately your book. A good writing coach is going to let your voice shine through, but it's important for you to have this authentic discussion, this back and forth of like, how is this working for me? How is this feedback helping me? And asking questions, being honest. Like, you don't want to lie to your writing coach about being like, oh yeah, totally. I wrote 5 hours a day this whole week, when in fact you've been crying in the corner. Instead, be honest, because what you put into it is what you'll get out. So definitely communication is key. And this is the same thing as what happens when you're working with an editor. So let's talk about working with an editor right now. Before we talk about working with an agent, let's talk about this because this is a really collaborative experience. You're giving your book editor your book, and you're expecting in exchange to have this objective and constructive feedback on your manuscript. And this is really important. I've said this a million times. We have a hole in our brain when it comes to identifying the real strengths and weaknesses of our work, and plot holes and things like that. We don't really see them that clearly because we're filling in the blanks. So your editor is going to be helping you with this. But I love it when a client pushes back and says, actually, I don't like this change. It's important for me to have this in here. And I get it. So you can have this open and honest discussion about a certain aspect of your story or a certain character or a certain detail. As the writer, you never have to take what your editor says at 100% like, oh, I have to do this. Take it with a grain of salt. Look at each suggestion. And this is why, as an editor, I never just edit in editing mode. I just do all suggestions so that my authors actually have the option of being like, you know what? I don't love your suggested change, and I think there's something better than I can do. And that's great because really working with an editor is all about collaboration, and it's worth your money even more than giving you a polished manuscript. It's a learning experience. It really helps you to identify patterns in your writing, to enhance your skills, to get new insights on what's going on. I think that it really contributes to your growth and it improves your future writing. So it's this great investment. And I think that seeing it as a collaboration and not as a, oh my God, I got trashed, that's really important. So definitely when you're working with an editor, sometimes editors are going to look at, you're going to not just be like, I'm hiring you automatically. Well, no, not necessarily. Your editor should look at your work and say, I believe or I don't believe that I'm a good fit for you. And then you also can ask about how they work, right? Do they do a sample edit? Many of us don't necessarily, but we can do one for a small price, for example. Do you do a sample edit, or how do you edit? What is your stance on, the author's voice? How do you look at, these quirks in an author's writing? How much do you correct or not correct? How are you going to communicate that? It's really important to chat with your editor or email back and forth and see that this is someone who can work with you, not against you, or not beat you over the head. It's important that you feel good about all of this because getting feedback on our work is not easy. So somebody needs to be delivering this information in a way that you can accept it and feel fine. So very important. Okay, let's talk about working with a literary agent. So for me, working with a literary agent, it can be, you would think that it's kind of a no-brainer because they're taking no money up front, and then they're helping you to get published. And I think there's some pros and cons. I've been scammed by literary agents before, and that's not to say that there aren't awesome agents. There are agents who are absolute champions of your work and that help authors to grow beyond anything they could have ever imagined. So definitely, I think you need to think about, okay, is this important for me? And if you do get an agent, being pretty confident in the fact that they are worth their fee, which I think so. I think once you've found a good one and they are actually doing their job, I think their fee is totally worth it. It's probably 10 to 15% of your royalties. I think that that seems like a totally fair thing because you're probably going to be selling more books than you would have sold on your own. But let's talk about briefly how it works. You typically are going to query a literary agent by sending them a query letter and a whole package, which includes a synopsis, sample chapters, etc. And I have a whole podcast episode on how to query an agent. And then if they're interested, they may request the full manuscript. Don't get too excited. This happens and they don't always decide to represent you. And if they decide to represent you, you enter into an agreement that's called a literary agency agreement. And, you've got to read your terms, make sure that everything seems, proper and correct. And then that agent may have this manuscript evaluation and editing, like they might provide feedback and suggestions for revising and polishing your manuscript. They act as a bit of a critical eye because they want to have it be perfect before they submit it to publishers. So this is where you might then be like, okay, it's worth it to me now to hire an editor so that we have the best chance possible of publishers being into my work. And then the agent's going to pitch the manuscript to publishers on your behalf. And this is where they are valuable because they're leveraging their industry connections and knowledge, and they are the ones who are going to be negotiating the best possible book deal for you, which includes advance payments, royalties, and some kind of contract. Their goal is to secure the most favorable outcome for you because indirectly or directly, this actually pays them off as well. So usually they're going to definitely be your champion, but some agents half-ass it, right? You feel like they're not doing their job, getting the best thing they can for you. But in general, a good agent is going to also give you guidance on a publishing contract. They're going to make sure your interests are protected, and they're going to be negotiating terms that benefit you. Part of those terms could be maybe subsidiary rights, like for film or TV rights, foreign translation rights, audio rights, all of that good stuff. And then a really great agent is not going to leave you after that. They're going to keep with you and stay with you throughout your career so that you can have this career trajectory that goes in the right direction. They can suggest future projects. They can navigate shifts in the market. They can position you for long-term success and growth within the industry. But let's talk about the pros and cons. So the pros are definitely their industry experience, expertise, connections. Definitely they can open doors that might otherwise be inaccessible to you. The contract negotiations are great because if they're a professional, they've been there, done that. So they know this more than you do. They can help you with manuscript development to increase your chances of getting published, and they can provide the guidance. That's really, really great. Now, what are some of the cons? Some of the less, professional literary agents, some of the ones who are a little bit more scammy, some of the problems. So what are some of the cons? So some people will say the commission is a con, like 50% of your writer's book sales that's deducted from your earnings. Like, what the heck? But I really feel like this commission definitely is probably worth it because they are trying to get as much revenue as possible for your book. So probably worth it is my guess. Another thing that people worry about when they get an agent is that, first of all, you have the gatekeeping aspect, right? It can be challenging for you to secure representation in the first place. And I feel like when you're querying a bunch of agents, you start to feel bad about your work because you're like, I'm getting rejected. So then you're not feeling confident if you decide that, hey, I didn't secure representation and now I'm going to self-publish my work. You're probably feeling like, okay, but my work's probably a piece of crap because nobody wanted it. And sometimes I feel that if you're getting turned down by everyone, that can just be the market, but that means something. Or it can be your writing, it can be your storytelling, any of that. Like maybe when you get rejected a million times, this can be a sign to go back to the drawing board. But oftentimes, this is just a business decision. There's a limited number of agents out there, and there are so many books out there. So sometimes it doesn't mean anything. It just means that like this is not the one that they want to, devote their efforts to, and you can still publish your book yourself. But oftentimes, I say that after all these rejections, go back and give it a really objective glance. Now, the problem is too, you feel like if you've got an agent, sometimes you can feel that you have limited control over your writing career because they are the ones who are going to be negotiating for you. They're the ones who are, telling you need to change your manuscript in this way. They're the ones who are suggesting, a new career direction. And that's really interesting. It means you have less autonomy over certain aspects. So maybe you're feeling like your creativity is being impacted in a way. Some authors don't really care because they're like, it's totally worth it as a trade-off. And some of you are like, you know what? But I want to have full creative control. Again, this is a choice, right? This is a choice. And I know that you start to feel like I'm dependent on this agent. What if I don't like my agent and now I'm stuck with them? Like, yeah. This is definitely a danger. And you probably have a contract with your agent as well. So choose wisely, that's for sure. But really, it can be very rewarding as well. So think about that. If you are self-publishing, you definitely do not need an agent. But if you are conventionally publishing, having an agent is definitely really, really helpful. Now let's talk about the book cover designer. This is usually, I would say, pretty non-negotiable. Many people, you need a good cover. When you look at the cover design tools that you find on a place like Amazon or something, I mean, those covers are so ugly. So you see how it can really help to make your book look more professional and more exciting and be more sellable if you have a fantastic book cover. And many of us can dabble in graphic design, but that Canva book cover is probably not going to be gaining you more fans or more readers. So hiring a book cover designer, it can be really fun. Many book, designers are so awesome, and authors are so excited when they get their book cover because it's something that really finally makes it feel like your book's been brought to life. It makes it feel real. So how do you work with these designers? I have to say that their pricing can vary widely. And you definitely want to see a book cover designer's portfolio. All of them have different styles, and you want to find the right one that corresponds with your brand, your style, your genre. Really important. Some book cover designers specialize in fantasy or in romance or, something like that. And that's really important for you to know. And many times when you're working with a book cover designer, you'll want to have an initial consultation so that you can discuss your vision. You'll be sharing information about the story, themes, or elements that you'd like to incorporate, but realize that you don't want it to get too busy. So your book cover designer has a little bit of a artistic vision that they're going with as well. I mean, I often find that you've got some book cover designers who listen more or less, or who read your book or not. And that's pretty funny. I think that it can be pretty awkward when you have a book cover designer who didn't bother actually checking out what your book's really about. And they're going to go in a direction that's completely wrong. I think that being able to convey the mood of a book is really cool if you can. So when you're working with a book cover designer as well, again, remember, it's all about collaboration and communication. And they're going to be developing the concept usually, depending on how much you pay. Like, so if you're paying rock bottom, you're probably going to get a couple concepts and they're going to be like, which one of these do you want? And you can say, okay, let's, change some little things, refine the ideas, but you're going to have a little bit less of a leeway or bandwidth to be able to really transform things beyond those initial design options. But you'll want to communicate really clearly when you have these initial concepts so that your cover designer understands what you need. Open communication is key, providing feedback and not freaking out. Right? The designer is going to take that input into consideration, and you don't want them to be feeling bad about you insulting them. And definitely you want to think about the overall aesthetic and don't go with something that you feel unhappy about, right? Oftentimes this process is multiple rounds of revisions and fine tuning with you working closely with the designer. That's really important. And then you might want to, go look with the feedback, see what your designer thinks, because this is usually not their first rodeo. And then the final file, you need to make sure that the designer is delivering it in the appropriate format. And it needs to look professional, visually appealing, and something that you can use. So definitely do your research, do your testing, work closely with them, and make sure that you end up with something that you really like, but you don't want to overpay on this one at all. Now, finally, you have other professionals like, the book trailer, the audiobook reader. And these are all people that you're going to be kind of seeing who you can work with and who's delivering a product that you believe in. But again, is it worth it for you to pay for this? Kind of important. And the last profession I'm going to be talking about, so many of you who hate the idea of marketing your book, don't want to do it yourselves, and yet you're self-publishing and you can't really skip it, you might be thinking about working with a publicist or a marketing consultant so that you can promote your book and create more visibility for it. Now, I've worked with publicists before, and I've worked with virtual assistants who helped me to create some, visual tools or some social media stuff. Or I have my publicist helped with crafting a marketing plan and doing some press releases, things like that. But really, I feel like with these things, it's important to keep working with these people and to be seeing what the actual kind of result is of each of these actions. Because at the end of the day, you're going to be paying for this and you want to be making sure that you're getting your money's worth, right? So what are some of the tasks that these people can do? They can be identifying goals and strategies. And you're going to be looking at, okay, what's my goal? Is it to raise awareness? Is it to increase book sales? Is it to build my brand? This is going to really impact which specific marketing plan you're going to have built for you. So based on your goals, the publicist or the marketing consultant can develop this comprehensive plan. And this can include different promotional activities, right? Is it media outreach? Is it book signings? Is it blog tours? Is it social media campaigns? Is it advertising? There are a million different ways of doing this. And it really depends on the writer, on their genre, and on what's going to work with your ideal audience. So think about also if you have a publicist and all they're doing is sending out press releases, honestly, that doesn't do very much. So you need these things to be targeted. And if it's not generating interviews or reviews or features or articles, maybe there's something that's going on, like things are too out in the ether. Things are not being, targeted enough. And that's really important to realize pretty quickly before you keep investing in it. Also for social media, you could ask a marketing consultant or a virtual assistant, for example, to create, X number of posts for you. Be like, how can I grow my online community? Somebody who's really good is going to have strategies. They're going to give you ideas, and then they might execute those ideas for you. But you want to make sure that that goes with your author branding. And many times you can hire somebody to create the author brand for you. But I say that, okay, they're going to provide you with professional headshots, bios, messaging, all of that. But really, this needs to be kind of, simpatico and aligned with your style and genre. And that means work from you. Many times, the campaign execution or the execution of this branding stuff, all of that, yes, maybe you're paying somebody to handle logistics, coordination, and follow-up. But also maybe they're going to say, hey, want to pay less? You need to do some of this. That's really important. And then at the end of the day, you're going to be receiving updates. If you don't get updates, that's not cool. You want to know the results of various promotional activities that you've had. You want to see how effective this is because, again, if it's not living up to your expectations, why are you paying for it? So definitely it takes some major honesty and having your eyes open and not just trusting that things are working. You want some actual results from this because if not, your investment is not a good investment. So that's that. So I hope this whole thing about working with various professionals really helped you to see where do you put your investment as a writer as you navigate from going from amateur to professional. If you enroll in my whole writing coach on-demand program or in my course From Idea to Publish in 6 Months, you're getting all of this wrapped into it. You're getting all this information, but also it's kind of helping you to have to invest a little bit less because it's helping you to set yourself up to require less work to promote your book or to get these things out. So that's pretty useful. And that's it. And also, I would love to know, call me up or send me an email. Let me know, what would you like to hear in an upcoming podcast? I always aim to help you to, have all the information that you need to really move forward in your professional writing career. So that's it. It's always a privilege being with you. Thank you for listening in, and I will be with you next time on the How to Be an Author podcast. If you have any pressing writing-related questions or would like to be featured on the How to Be an Author podcast, please feel free to reach out on my website, creativeandwritingcoach.com.